I'd like to just have a quick word from our sponsor, Alyssa.
Thank you, Patrick. As many of you may know, we have some great tools and also a great community site here at Qdabra. So before we get started, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. First of all, we have our community, InfoPathDev.com. If you haven't checked this out, certainly give it a look. It's a great information resource. There's downloads on there, there's free support, blogs, just a lot of great information. Next, we have our more urgent support option. So we have that free support on our InfoPath Dev site, but for faster support, we have our pay-as-you-go support packs. So simply give us a call, submit a request, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Qdabra also does consulting work for hire. So if you want a Microsoft MVP's help on a project, simply contact us. And we do have a lot of active projects right now, and we'd be happy to set up a project meeting to learn more about what the solution you're looking for. So just contact us and we can set that up. We also have a lot of great tools and templates. And what's great about these tools and templates is that we do have free trials available on our website. And we also do have that 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not completely satisfied. We also build scalable, lasting solutions with our web services. We have a free trial of DBXL, and that's our database accelerator web service. And that's on our website, so download it and see how that can work for your company. Lastly, I just wanted to briefly talk about our InfoPath training courses. We have courses offered both online and in person. Upcoming in-person course is going to be September 10th through the 13th, and that is in the Seattle, Washington area. Otherwise, we do offer online courses both for beginner to intermediate skill levels and also intermediate to advanced. Those are coming up in the end of September is our beginner to intermediate, the 30th through October 4th. And then the next intermediate to advanced course is going to be October 21st through the 25th. So certainly let us know if you are interested in those, and we can get started with the webinar.
Thank you, Alyssa. Okay, so today, what are we doing? Well, email addresses are important. If you have a form you've developed, you may want to send emails to folks. You may also want to integrate those forms with workflow, and sometimes workflow can use email and account IDs. So we're going to talk about two scenarios today, one in which we have one email address, and then we have multiple as well, because sometimes you want to broadcast to a number of users. And we've got a bunch of simple techniques here. Most of my webinar is going to be showing you the demo is not going through the slide deck here, but we do have some simple techniques. First of all, before I show you these, let's just talk about the simple techniques. Manual entry. You can have a field in your form that allows you just to enter in the text. Let me just quickly show you these techniques here. I'm going to show you the techniques in the browser first, and then we'll talk about the designer. So I have InfoPath SharePoint 2010 site here, and you can see I published this form out. Now the form has some hide and show sections, so we're only showing the technique in the drop-down, and you'll see in the designer that I'm showing all the techniques. So we'll select these and just walk through these quickly. So the first technique is to use manual entry, and this just requires that the person enter a valid email. Now here, if I just enter my name, I have a rule on this field that says, hey, it's not valid email, and I'll show you how we did that rule in a second. So this is one technique. This technique doesn't, though, validate the email address. So in the case where the actual email address is a valid format, it's going to not highlight for us, but it's not going to know if that's actually a valid email or not. So that's the one big problem with manual entry. With the second technique, that's simple, is using a static drop-down. Now here what I've done is I've just included three emails in a static drop-down, and this is very easy to do. The other approach you could take is use checkboxes. So we can have a checkbox, and we can enter checkboxes like this, and then when we switch back to the other approach, you'll see that that they show up there, because we're binding the fields to the same elements in the data source. So whether I use the drop-down control or the checkboxes, you see them both, right? And they copy one another. Now the final technique is to use a dynamic list. The dynamic list is going to look up values from SharePoint, and here you can see I've got 4 values, and I can switch to my SharePoint site here. Hopefully I can find this easily enough. And I can add another item to my dynamic, we'll just say webinars at Qdabra.com. And this is a really nice technique because it allows you to quickly update the list of emails without having to republish the form. So hopefully that took. There it is. And we'll go back to our form. I can find it here. And we're going to close it and refresh it. Actually, this is the wrong form. I should not have done that. Okay, where were we? Okay, we've got a lot of demos for today, as you can see. Here we go. So we're going to close this one, and we'll just reopen it. And when we do that, we'll pick the dynamic list technique, and you'll see that now I have that webinars at Qdabra.com in there. So you're wondering, well, how did I do all this? So let's talk about that. So what I did was I create a form. This is very simple to do, and this form is 2010, but I have 2013 InfoPath. We just have set the compatibility to 2010. If you're running 2010, you'll be able to open all these forms. We'll send them to you after you fill out the feedback. And this form just has that drop down there. It has the technique, and then I have these sections here. And the sections just have formatting controls on them. If we're not equal to 1, we hide this section, and so on. And this is pretty simple. You can understand how this is done. We just have a drop down, and if you right-click on the drop down, you can see I've hard-coded those 3 values in. For the first control, I want to validate this is email, so I actually have email pattern validation over here on the right. If you can see that. And what we're doing is we just have a condition, and InfoPath has this wonderful option. I don't know how many people have used it, but we have this ability to match a pattern. And when we do that, we can select the pattern, and it gives us this nice little pop-up with a bunch of choices that have already been pre-coded. And this is a regular expression matcher, so you can actually add your own patterns here. It's very powerful. And in this case, we're just choosing the default email, which is already there for us. That's very nice. And then the dynamic list lookup here, we're using a secondary data source. So we have a connection to an XML file that's on SharePoint. In fact, what I did was I took this form and I created another form from it called dynamic list. And that's, let me show you that one here. I believe I have it. Here it is. So this is a very simple form, right? This is the simple form that's editing those values. And I just published this out to SharePoint. You can see here I've got this on my SharePoint site. And I just published this out as a browser form, and that's what I was showing a moment ago here. And I just saved one copy of this form called dynamic list. That's what you see here. I right-clicked it, just copy shortcut, right? And then I went into my form and I added that shortcut as a data connection. I went data connection, add, and you can see here that there is the link to that XML file. So I just create a form to edit my email addresses. And the benefit there is it gives us a data-driven design, which means that I can update the list of emails in that drop-down without having to republish this form, which is what you just saw. So let's quickly recap. Simple techniques. You got manual entry, good, easy. They can type in whatever they want. If you have email users who are outside of your network, hey, it'll work just fine. That's not doing any validation, which also could be a problem though. Static selection in the form, you know they're going to be valid because you type them in. However, every time they change, you have to update your form. Then finally, that dynamic list look query is a technique that automatically looks up emails from a list on SharePoint. And this is great, not as flexible as the first approach because they can't just type in any email. They have to be in the list. And you will have to update the list and keep it up to date, but it does reduce your costs. So those are the simple techniques. And if you have questions, I see we have one question here. Feel free to post them in the webinar, and I will get back to them at the end of the webinar. And it looks like we have an audio issue with one person. Alyssa, can you verify that I'm not dropping out?
Patrick, I can hear you just fine, so I don't know. On my end, it sounds just fine.
So Catherine, I'm sorry. There must be a bad connection between here and the UK, which is where you're at. So we are recording this, so don't worry. We will post the recording. And if my audio is bad, please yell and scream, and I'll try to verify that I'm not losing you because we know how flaky the internet can be sometimes. Okay, so moving right along. There's some more techniques. In fact, probably the most common techniques people use today is the people picker. People picker is a nice control that was added in 2007 InfoPath. I think it was called the person. It's called the person group picker now. I'm just going to close some of my windows here and show you that form. In fact, I have it open in the browser, and we're just going to switch quickly to our people picker demo. If I can find it. There it is. Now this form, we have two views in this form. We have a view for people picker, we have a view for user profile service, and we'll see that in a second. And I'm going to show you how I did this. I'm going to open it up in the designer too. But let's just take a look at what this is. So this is an InfoPath browser form 2010, and we can type in people's names here, and we get this nice validation. It says, hey, couldn't find the person. But we can click on this little book here, and we can search, and you can find, lo and behold, that I have 4 Patricks in this organization. And I can select my name by double-clicking or clicking the Add button. And I can go and I can select Alyssa's name. Got to search it. There she is. We can add Alyssa. Okay. Now when we do that, you'll see that we still have that first one. We need to delete that, but that's a problem. And now we should not have any validation issues. So now we have these 2 user accounts here. And you can see if I hover over it, Alyssa is showing up with her name correctly there, but it's got the domain account name there if I hover over it. For my name, for whatever reason, maybe it's because it's old, we didn't put a good name in there for my account name. But you can see that, that I've got both of these now appearing down below. Now the people picker is nice because it integrates with SharePoint really well, browser form. And it also integrates with Outlook really nicely, and it can be integrated with workflow. And we'll show you that in a second. And in fact, why don't I show you right now? We have workflow on this library, a very simple workflow. And the workflow is simply emailing the people that we've picked. And we've got two different users here. We've got the people from the people picker, and we've got the people from the user profile service, which I'll show you in a second. The neat thing about the workflow here is that you don't have to have email. The workflow will work just fine with just the account names, because it will look them up. So this is very, very powerful and a very simple to see. You can see I only have one step there in my workflow, and I can send an email to myself by just clicking Submit here. And in a second, I should get an email. Very simple email. There it is. Very simple email that just got sent to me. And Alyssa got one too, hopefully. Alyssa, you might want to chime in and let me know if you got yours. But obviously we'd want to change this link to make it open in the browser. But that's how simple it is to do. Now let's take a look at how we did that.
I didn't get mine yet, but I'll let you know.
Okay, great. So here is the form, and I need to change the view to the... When you get these forms, you'll have these 2 views, people picker and user profile service. So here what we've done is we just added this control, and this is the great thing about this is that it's just up there on your controls list. You just click on person group picker right there. We call it people picker because that's what it used to be called. And then it injects this into your form. Now notice when you inject it into your form, you get this section here on the right. This is the section that it adds right here, this guy. And the problem with this section is it's read-only. So you can notice down below here that if I select person, I can't add any fields. So it's a special control, and that means that it's got some issues with it. It's hard to use to extend it. We couldn't add, for example, other properties here. We're going to get the display name, the account ID, and the account type, but that's it. But that's good enough because what we can do is we can actually concatenate those together and promote the property and have workflow send email. We do not need email to integrate it with workflow. That's the key thing here. And how did we do that? Well, we have this field down below, and we've set the field to automatically calculate using this really tricky thing, which I'm going to talk about at the end of the webinar, called eval. And this is basically just going through and it's copying all of those account IDs that are not equal to, that are not blank, and it's concatenating them together with a semicolon, which you saw in the demonstration I just did. And then what it does is it promotes that field to SharePoint. So we have a promote property here for that field, and that's right there. And all you have to do is promote that property, and that's good enough. Now let's talk about the second technique. Now the other thing we can do here is we can actually use it with user profile service. So let's say you really want those emails. Well, you can have the people picker look up the emails from the SharePoint user profile service. Now SharePoint user profile service is a web service in SharePoint that automatically gives you property information about the users. So let's quickly type in Alyssa's. Let's see, if I type in Alyssa's full name, if I get it right, it will probably automatically work here. Oh, nope, it doesn't. So we got this nasty little error here that's happening. We can just ignore that for now because this is a demo. It's not always a smooth sail, as you know. But we can add these accounts here, and then notice that as I add them, let me add Alyssa's here. Hopefully Alyssa's will work. We might have a bug in the demo. Yeah. So if this is wrongly formatted, it appears that it's calling out to the user profile service as soon as we tab out of the field, and it's looking for a certain format. So we should have updated that to be correct. If I select another person here, let's just see if I can find one that has a. So here's another one that's in a different domain, but you can see that that one actually worked and it was able to look it up, but there's no email associated with them. But so here what we've done is we need to change this to actually look up from the right field. And because this is a short webinar, I'm not going to go in and do that, but we'll do that before we send you the sample. So here what we've done is we use the people picker to select the person, in this case me, and you can see there's my account information. And then the user profile service goes off and queries that person and gets their email address. And then we have down below here, so if I type in my name twice, you'll see, I'm just going to use that one account that we know is working. You can see that it concatenates those two email addresses correctly. Okay, so I'll show you how we did that in a second, but here's how we query the user profile service. So we have to add, so I'll switch to the view. We have to query user profile service. So we have to add the user profile service to our data connections, and that's just going to be your website. In this case, it's auformsword.com, webinar 829, and then you're going to have underscore VTI bin user profile service at ASMX. And this is really easy to do. Then we have a rule that when we insert a value here, we are looking it up by querying that web service. So I think if we select this guy here, where is the rule? So it's got to be somewhere in here. The other problem with the people picker is you can't have rules on these values. In fact, because it's a special control, you can't extend them, nor can you add triggers to them. So we would expect the triggers to be somewhere else. And here you see that we have this trigger here that's automatically setting itself equal to the account ID in the list, and then it's going off and it's querying the user information. And the way we do that is simply we set the query information in the secondary data source. Here you can see the secondary data source. We set that query field, account name, and we set it equal to the current account, and then we query the data connection, and that's just a simple rule action. And then once we're done, we add that value to the email. So very easy to get the email from user profile service for the people picker. So quick recap. People picker is very useful, and it's special InfoPath control. Used to be called people pickers. Today it's called person group picker in 2010, 2013. It integrates very easily with workflow, and it's flexible. You can't add people that aren't in your Active Directory or your SharePoint list. Actually, it's doing a global address lookup. So it's the global address list that it's looking up. So the downside is that it's not going to give you email out of the box, but you can certainly use user profile service to get it. User profile service does not work in the cloud. We'll show you in the next technique. We'll show you how to get the email if you have a cloud-based form. And you can't do any kind of triggers or controls. It's a little trickier to use, harder to extract the information. I will show you in a second how we concatenate those values together again. The SharePoint user profile service, very, very popular. In fact, I want to do a shout out to one of our friends, Clayton Cobb, who has a wonderful, wonderful website on this technique. And if you search for his SharePoint Madness blog, he has on the very top page his most commonly commonly linked to post is this get user information without writing code. And I just like to shout this out because he's got a very nice tutorial here, and you can walk through this, and you can set up your form to get the user profile information. That's all the information that's in your Active Directory that's been synchronized with SharePoint. Now, one of the downsides of using user profile service is it's not going to synchronize Active Directory immediately. It's going to take a day. So if you add a new user, it's not automatic. That can be an issue for some people. Let's talk about some advanced techniques. So first of all, I did mention that user profile service does not work in the cloud. So that's Office 365. And we do have a solution for you. The cloud-based version of Office 365 has now been updated to 2013 for us. And we have a little demo here with a form. And this form is just a total browser-based form. It's actually just going to query the users on my site, so all the users in my 365 account. And by default, it's going to give me my current user, and I can get the properties for the current user, which is me. But I can also look up the properties for somebody else, and we have a few people in the drop-down. You could actually put more people in the drop-down. You could have people type in the email address. And we just use the email address here as a lookup, but you could actually do the lookup using their preferred name, for example. So this is an example of us getting information about users from Office 365. And one thing that's really interesting is that login name, and you can use that to do various things in 365. So if you're worried about getting user information in 365 because user profile service is no longer there, rest assured that you can use this technique. This technique, what is it? Well, it's QRules. So QRules has a command. Some of you may already know what QRules is, but we have this sample here, and you'll get this sample, and you can basically publish this to your 365 account. There are some instructions you need to follow to fix up the data connection, but this guy is just actually going through, and it's got a rule here to query the user, and the way it does that is it just calls the get user profile by name command in QRules. So it's very easy to implement. And we have two versions of this command depending on whether the user is blank or not. Yes, this is for current user and this is for someone else in the drop-down. So that's another example of a way to get user information, email address information if you're in 365. Okay, one more technique here. So we're often asked, well, how do I get information from Active Directory? I have a lot of information in Active Directory. I want to be able to look up the users. Get user profile service doesn't allow me to search for a substring. And I really want to be able to find somebody without having, I want the people picker-like ability, but I want to do it with Active Directory because I don't have the global address list set up, or because I've got all my information in Active Directory and I can't synchronize it with SharePoint for whatever reason. So many, many years ago, we created an Active Directory web service, which is very popular, and it has some advantages over the out-of-box user profile service. In fact, if you look at Clayton Cobb's site, what's kind of curious is even though his technique here to get user information is the most popular out there using that SharePoint web service, his company actually uses our web service because of a bunch of limitations in user profile service. And the main one is that it doesn't touch Active Directory directly, but there's a bunch of other limitations. One is if you want to get information, like you want to get all of the users for a manager, or you want to get Like I said, you want to search for a user using a substring, or if you want to get the manager's information. You can get the manager's information with user profile service, but it's quite a bit of work. So there's some limitations there. Let me show you this technique. And I need to open it because I forgot to pre-open it. But you'll get this example as well, and this is they're all in the package that you get if you fill out the feedback form. So here's the form, and this is kind of a sample form. What it does is, I just created this last week for another customer of ours. It's going to search the Active Directory when I open it up, and it's going to give me all the users that match. And I'm going to be able to select one of those users, get more information about them, and then I can add them to the approvers list down below, and I can add multiple ones, and I can concatenate them together and send a person an email. So let's take a look at this in the preview. And this works just fine in the browser as well. So here on load, it's getting Patrick, but I can actually get Janice, and I can show her details, and I can add her to the approvers list, and she'll show down below. Now all these details, this is all the information in Active Directory, and your Active Directory will have other information in it. So it may have more information, it may have less. We don't have a lot of information in our Active Directory, but you can see there's a list of information. And we've got now 2 people here in the approvers list. Looks like we might have a bug there as well. Let me add my name. Okay, and I don't know why we didn't get Alyssa's email. That's really weird. It must be because there's something weird with her name or something. So we've got 2 people in the approvers list, and now what we can do is we can click this button to create the email, and then we can send the email, and it would send the email out to those people. And that's just using the stock email data connection in InfoPath. I've got another issue here with my 2013 install of Outlook. I don't know why this is happening, but it wasn't happening the other day. Okay, so but anyway, the technique here is to call the Active Directory web service. How did we do that? Well, let's take a quick look. So we have in this form here, we tab out of the search window, we have a rule that queries find user by name, and that's an Active Directory web service. So if we go to our data connection, you'll see that we have find user by name, and we have 2 web services, 2 web methods from the web service. The web service actually has many web methods in it. In fact, I can show you these web methods. We have all of these web methods. We have get my domains, get all users, get the groups for the user, get the members of the group, get the manager's alias, and so on. In this case, I'm using find user by name. So this is an example of a substring search, which is useful because sometimes you don't know what the exact name of the user is. Yeah, and so then we get we look them up, and then we get their information, and then we can extract their email. The way we extract their email is we add them to this list, and here I'm just setting a value. Actually, to create the email list, I'll talk about this more in a second, but when I add them to the approvers list, I'm just simply inserting the user in this list down below, and I have a command I'm using to do that. So those are the 2 advanced techniques, and if you have questions, please add them. I've gone through these demos. I've showed you the simple techniques, the intermediate techniques, and the 2 advanced techniques, and I've talked about the pros and cons of those. They're all different. Everyone probably has a different technique they're going to use. I encourage you when you're filling out the feedback form to let us know what technique you're using today, because I'm kind of curious. Now there's 2 techniques in copying emails. Let's say instead of just sending it to one person, you actually want to send it to multiple people. And this comes up a lot. So let's talk about this for a second, and then I'll take questions. So the first place this comes up is when you're dealing with the people picker. You want to concatenate all of the addresses together. And here we're concatenating the email addresses from the user profile service. And this field here has a default condition or default rule. Actually, it's not a rule. It's a default value. And that default value is simply concatenating all of the fields that are not blank. And it's this eval is essentially looping through a repeating structure. So this is really tricky. And the eval technique, it works just fine, but it's a pain to try to get it to work because sometimes you don't put the commas next to the dots correctly. We're also using this technique on the people picker view, and we're doing it though with the people. So here what we have is we have the account IDs, so this is not email. So this is basically the very similar approach. We have eval, and we have this filter for the account ID. So I've selected the account ID, and I've got a filter on it where it's not blank. So that's pretty easy to understand. What's really hard to understand is how this thing works. What it's really doing here is it's running this concat command on all the parent nodes. So the repeating parent node would be the PC person in this case. And the concat command is passing in this value to that concat command. So the way to think about this is eval is running this second command by passing in this value. So that's how it works, but still very confusing for folks. So there's another technique, and the other technique is what I just showed in this form. And what we do here is kind of interesting. We have in our main data source, we have a table for the approvers, and we have actually 3 columns. You only see 2 in the view, but we actually have a 3rd column. And this column gets set, we trigger this. So when we click on this button to create the email list, it's actually setting that column trigger copy, and it's just basically toggling it. It's flipping it back and forth. And the way we do that is we say trigger copy equals false. If trigger copy is false, it becomes true. If trigger copy is true, it becomes false. And the reason why we have to flip it back and forth is to change the value. Whenever we change the value, we fire a rule. And the rule is on trigger copy, so it's just concatenating the email. Very simple to do. And we just concatenate the email with the other emails. So you can see here, we're just, this is where we want all the emails to go. So at the very beginning, that's blank. But it's going to fire for every row. So every single row is going to run this concat again, again, again. And so it's that email to field is going to build up. And it's going to be email colon, email colon, email colon, and so on. So this is a very nice out-of-box technique. No code required to do this. But you do need to have 2 things. Number one is you need to have that column that you're triggering on. And if in a case where you want to copy values into the table, which is another way to do this, you need to have default data, default values. So those are the 2 solutions for copying people from a repeating table. And that's pretty much all I had for my demos. Let's answer your questions. So once again, Qdabra is all about magic here, and we're here to help you. We have a new offer for you today, and that's the form detailing service. So some of you may have used this before, but we have been using InfoPath. We've been designing solutions. We built a product. I was at Microsoft. I was the development manager for the InfoPath team, and we really know InfoPath, so we're willing to take a look at your form and tell you the good, the bad, and the otherwise. In other words, we'll tell you what you did well, we'll tell you what you could improve on, and this is something we normally charge, $150 or $300 for. So what we're doing is we're taking your submissions. So if you send us your form, if you've got a cool form and you can convince us that it's cool, we'll take a deeper look at it. So you just need to give us a list of why you think your form rocks. We'll do the free evaluation and send you back a nice little report of how well your form did. And we'll give you ideas for improving it. So this is a nice little offer, one time only. You got to just send an email to support@qdabra.com, include your XSN, include a paragraph of why your form rocks, and we'll do the free evaluation if we agree with you. Okay, questions. So we have questions. We've got a lot of questions. And we've got a lot of people who responded saying that they could hear. So audio is still good, apparently. That's good to know. Thank you, Imran. Thank you, Tom, for that. And Catherine is still with us. Thank you, Catherine, for being patient. So a couple questions here. Pete has a question. For the dynamic list, is it possible to have a drop-down entry field that updates the SharePoint list so that the emails manually entered are available for the next user? Great question. So what you want to do is you want to go into SharePoint. Let's see, where am I? Okay, where is the example that I had earlier? Well, I can go to it again. So what you want to do is you want to be able to add here. Instead of getting this list of 5, you want to be able to add one in and have it reflect back in the dynamic list. Yes, you can do this. And actually, we covered it in a webinar, I think a couple months ago. You have to use a technique to map your data to the SharePoint list. So in this case, we're using an XML file. The data connection is to an XML file. And we could save a secondary XML file out as well using QRules. But typically, the way people do this is with the list. They create a list and they pull the data from the list. And you can definitely do that. There's two techniques for mapping your forms data to a list, and we actually have a sample on this. So if you send us email, we'll dig up that sample, and we may even take a note to show it at our next webinar. Great question. Tom's got a question. For the ADWS lookup, I assume you can use the radio buttons instead of buttons if you want a single selection. Yeah, radio buttons. So I'm not quite sure I understand the question. Let me just go back to the form. Now here, the form. So here you've got the lookup, and yeah, definitely you could just use radio buttons here instead of the buttons. Yeah, totally. And then you just have a rule in the radio buttons that basically did that. You have yes, no, right? Yes, no, or something. They default to no. If they click on yes, we automatically add them down below. Here, because this matching users list is updating, I chose to use buttons, but you could definitely use radio buttons there as well, or checkboxes. Kevin's got a question. Could you use this technique for an upgrade to 2013? From 2007 or 2010? Well, I'm not sure what you mean by this. Oh, you mean form evaluation? Yeah, the promo. Well, the promo is to look at your form, and we're not going to necessarily tell you what it's going to take to upgrade your form, but we will call out the issues your form might have. If your form rocks and we agree with you and we decide to look at your form, we're not going to look at every single form we get sent. We might look at 90% of them if they're all really cool. But if we don't like what your form looks like, then we may just depends on how many forms we get. If we only get 5 forms, we'll look at all of them. So yes, we will cover what works in the browser, what doesn't. We will also call out issues that you may have if you're using a 2003 form in 2013. Great questions. So anyway, just want to quickly say that we're here for you, and thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to fill out feedback. We have the goodies for you. We'll be sending you all the goodies from today's webinar, including the PowerPoint presentation and all the samples you saw. You will need to fix the samples up when you get them, and a couple of the samples have instructions on how to do that. A couple of them, though, are very simple to fix up. Some of them, you just open them in the designer, you just take a look at what we did. That's all you need to do. You don't need to publish them out. But if you do need to publish them, you will need to make sure you change the publish location to point to your site. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure presenting, and we hope to have you back next week.